Anything we want to add to the agenda?
I want to update the
We're gonna,
resilient meeting for CAC, yes.
okay. And then, are these pieces on the, red on the top, Carol, do we have to read these for,
Those are the ones that were added for extensions.
okay. So we're gonna have some extensions, this evening for the FEMA grant filings at, 5 Irving Road, 87 Scituate Ave, and 162 Jericho. Anybody else? And I don't see the Trail Subcommittee on,
Trail Subcommittee
I got it,
report and
okay.
discussion.
got it.
Okay.
Yep.
I make a motion we accept the agenda with the add-ons granted me.
Second.
So I think,
Go.
All in favor?
all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. That's just a formality.
We know that's
Maybe the Trails folks are here. Before we even start that, what's really not good is that this will be Carol's last meeting here.
This is very sad.
You're gonna make us cry.
22 years? 22 years, so that's probably a couple thousand meetings.
And she was
At
22 when
least.
she started.
Tough
Got
job.
one every week for years.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, this is not, like I said, this is not good for the commission. It's great for Carol, but we certainly,
She can sleep in. She doesn't have to worry.
Now I'll have to watch TV.
Oh, that's awful.
For entertainment purposes.
well, we'll have an opportunity to,
We'll find you, Carol. Don't you worry, dear.
We know where you
but
live.
certainly been very fortunate for her to follow all that. And dealing with us is no picnic, I'm sure.
No, it is not.
We may have the opportunity to take this up at a little later time, but just want to say thanks at this meeting, Carol, that's for sure. So the trails and parking issue. Marla, Rich, whoever wants to speak to this. Good evening.
Hi, I just have things for you to see. There's two different copies of logos here, and
So Marla, for those of you who don't know, Marla, Rich, Steve Ivis is here.
You don't have to know Latin, it's just a placeholder.
They've been working on our
Thank you.
a mapping system for all of our town trails.
Thank you.
And
Latin, I go with
it's
Latin.
kind of a twofold project along with the parking, which we'll address in a couple of minutes. So just Marla wanted to get in and sort of update the committee on our,
sure.
where we were at, which is kind of exciting.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So we've been working very hard with a committee of 5 or 6 of us. To put the existing trails that we have on maps, and also to create new trails. We also have designed 2 different logos that need your approval. The other thing we have here is this is a placeholder template for our map that we wanted to come to you tonight and get your approval for the template so that we can then use this as a model for the other properties. This one is for the Driftway Park, but the 6 other properties that we have, we would like to do something similar to this, so we need your approval to go forward. But I'd like to introduce to you Steve Ivis, who won our invitation to bid. He and his crew of Justin Ivis and Jeff Peterson have worked really hard with us to develop all of this. And he's sitting back there. He represents Ivis Environmental.
So for you that don't know what this, Steve's crew went to some of these trails, and they've walked them, and they use a GPS system to get all that information and then plot it onto these trails. So when we're done, we'll have a really accurate mapping of the trails, and not only will it be in paper form, but will be on a website or
Yeah, it will be virtual form before it's paper form. We don't really want to print paper until we have all 7 trails mapped. Right now, all the 5 existing trails are mapped and ready to go. So that's why we're here tonight, to get approval for this template so that we can go forward with the virtual mapping.
This is great.
yeah. So if we would like to do, Jen's been working hard on this and really been a huge help. I'm a little technically challenged with some of this, so. So it's been a lot of fun to see how this comes together. But what we'd really like is the commission's thoughts on these maps. Take a look at them. You can respond in an email or something. We'd like to get that input fairly quickly. But if we like the format, we like how it looks. The piece that's in Latin on the other side will be sort of a little history, a little bit of information of the trail. Some of them, how they were formed. You know, for this driftway piece, it might get into how this land was formerly Boston Sand and Gravel property, and some of the things that happened on the property, and then why is the A.J. McEachen Trail there. We want to have, you know, it's not a book, it's just a little bit of information that folks could use. And so if at any time when these are coming together, if anybody has anything they want to add to that, it would be great. And then also look at the rules in the corner to make sure that we sort of are all on the same page with that. And then in working on this, we've had some input as to maybe a little bit different logo. Our logo on our stationery has been an egret or salt marsh bird. Yep. With some marsh grass. And we thought we'd like to up the game a little bit. And the EDC has a kind of a logo that they've put together with this lighthouse and a dory and that sort of thing. And so we've got some different iterations of that, and we'd really like for the commission to take a look at these and give us their thoughts. And they could be in, we just have them in black and white tonight, but they could be in different colors. We could get some blue, or whatever. I keep saying blue because we're in Scituate. So it really, you know, if anybody has any questions for Marla or Rich, Steve right now, please ask away. And
Very little thing. I'd put a little foot sign behind the 200, 400, 800, so they know it's feet.
Okay, noted.
Sorry on the list.
Didn't think I'd be the first.
In fact, I got an updated version at 5:30 tonight. It might even be on there now.
So there are some small changes.
Yeah, there is. It's already there.
That's all.
Yeah, it's there. And then there was another word that was added on the blue section.
That's great. This is great.
I think maybe on the Driftway one, we actually mentioned that they might indicate that Widows Walk is across the street. That might help people.
Understand where they are.
Yep.
Orient themselves.
Where
That's
are
a good
these
reference point.
gonna go? Where will people find these?
We thought they could be here at Town Hall. They could be at the library. We will, as you know, we have kiosks planned. They could
Yeah.
go in the kiosk. At the senior center, the library,
Okay, no,
All
I
around
was just
town.
wondering where.
yeah.
That's great. Great.
They would also be available on the Conservation Commission website.
Yes,
A lot of other towns
Yeah.
keep them there as well.
yeah.
You might want to try putting them in the various village post offices.
Oh, good idea, yes. Right. We're not there yet.
No, I understand.
Yeah. We're just looking for your approval to go forward with this model.
But what goes into this one will wind up in all the others.
Yeah, so that's why it's important for your approval.
Okay.
Except the Latin, I hope.
Yeah.
That's just a
Tried to figure
placeholder,
out
you
what
know
it said,
that.
and I'm very rusty.
Okay. And then maybe the second part of this, while you're thinking about this, is the access and the parking. And Penny and I have been, and Paul Scott have been working to get that moved along. went before Penny and I were at the planning board the other night and explained to them what we're doing. It seemed pretty well received, and it has with various other groups. So we're ready to start to move forward. I've got a few plans up here. I can share them later on. But our plans are about 80% complete for the access roads and the parking. And I think what's important is we're going to have some sort of public meeting, maybe the next couple of weeks,
Yeah.
just to explain this to
And go ahead.
folks that are interested in this, abutters, that kind of thing. And then there'll actually be hearings, RDAs or NOIs for the various pieces. One of them's a wetlands crossing. So there's quite a bit to do with this. So there'll be the opportunity for citizens to weigh in on those pieces as well. Penny, you want to add anything?
No, just everything went really well at the planning board. They were thrilled. They supported us 100%. And we just have to have the public forum meeting and set that date and then go forward with the NOI and the RDAs. And then we're ready for bid.
So it's all been a good,
It's
a lot of
moving.
work all winter long from a lot of folks, but it's showing really well at this stage, don't you think?
Excellent.
Yeah. It is a process. You know, you think you can do it like that, but you can't. You gotta go step of the process. So as long as we're moving forward,
Marla, if you're kind of looking for some, get the nod on this, do we want to do that?
I feel like there's a lot to look at and a lot to think about, so I think it's probably too much to ask everyone to say, oh, yeah, let's pick this logo right now, but,
There are a lot of different choices. I wonder how we can pare that down
I know.
on the logo piece.
People could put an X next to it, X next to the one, and then I'll tally them up and give it to Marla.
Perfect.
okay. You want to do you need some time to think about it? Do you want a week? Do you want, a couple of days?
I think a
What-
few days. I don't think we need to go a week, everybody will forget.
Yeah.
So let's try to do that in the next couple of days.
Okay.
All right?
And any comments that you might have on our pamphlet as well, on the map?
no, I was thinking these were all the same except.
No,
for
they're
the
all different.
They're all
No,
different.
but they're in different colors, and now, I see differences.
The test, you can spot the difference.
Yes, my eyes are getting old, you
Right,
know.
and also these two that Jeff did look very similar too, but there are
No, I
differences
can
in
tell
those.
those
They're not the
quickly
same.
that
Yeah.
they are different.
Yeah, so
But,
that's why I say I think you might
yeah.
need, a couple of minutes.
So we have a lot to
Privately
discuss
to look at
in
it.
other hearings tonight, but
Yeah.
maybe we can take that up and chat. But we want to get you back an answer.
Yes,
All right?
great.
Awesome. Anything
Okay,
else
thank
you
you
want to?
very much.
And again, we appreciate the effort. I mean, there's so much that's gone into pulling this together, and Martha just keeps, Marla just keeps up the push to get this thing done. Here's a task, let's move it along. And then while Rich is here, just thank him for all the work that he and Howard have been at with the trails. You guys have been doing a great job, and really,
It was a long winter.
yeah, a lot of trees came down. But
It's interesting,
our,
March, it's crazy.
it's a small but very productive crew that gets out there and gets that work done, and it's appreciated.
Well, hopefully when all this is put together, Jennifer and I have been talking about expanding the crew and expanding interest in the trails, so. But we need to get parking and everything established first, and then we'll move ahead.
Right. I mean, what we'd really like to see is different residents that use an area consider adopting an area, maybe getting some folks together that hike on a regular basis or use a certain area, maybe get together and once a week or a couple times a month, get out in those properties and walk them, and if they can do some of the maintenance, and the things they can't, they can report back and help us keep an eye on things. So we're excited
That's our
about it.
plan.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This looks great, really. We'll have less calls from people that are in the woods and say, where am I? So we should probably just roll into the RDA, or do you want to do enforcement, Amy? So, it's your preference.
No, I would go to the enforcements, please.
Okay, so, Bior, I am gonna kill this, 23 Oceanside Drive. Is
So-
anybody here for,
On that one, I think you're just ratifying.
okay, you're right,
So we have to vote?
Yes.
yep.
Chairman, my name is Donald Nagel, and I'm here on behalf of the owner.
Mm-hmm.
And before there's any vote on the ratification, may I speak to it? May I speak to the issue?
You can be brief, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be brief. I note that the order was issued on April 10th, and there is a requirement that if only one signature is on the order, then it must be ratified at the next scheduled meeting, which is right in the form, it says that right in the form. And so I would submit that this enforcement order is invalid because it wasn't ratified at the next scheduled meeting.
So let's issue a new one today.
Amy, any thoughts on that?
I suppose you could issue a new one then,
Absolutely.
identical enforcement order and ratify it
Yeah.
same time.
Right now?
Okay,
Because we know we've got ongoing issues there, so.
right. I mean, it's kind of a technicality, if that's what you think is appropriate. We want to make sure we do it right. But it's really, we're kind of not getting to the point of where we need to be with this, so.
Yeah, my intent is not to get to the substance because I know that there was a hearing on this, it was continued, but it is not merely formality because, as you know, these orders are enforceable, rather they're appealable. And although the order was issued on 4/10, the green card date is 5/22/18. So I think the recipient received it really after the appeal period had expired. So I think just for the process and procedurally to do this correctly, I would submit again that the enforcement order, because it wasn't ratified, is not effective. If it's issued again, then the landowner has the opportunity to consider his appeal rights.
Okay.
Yeah, Frank, we can run this by legal counsel and get their advice, but I mean, as far as the green card goes, Mr. Boyajian had come into the office and discussed the enforcement with us,
All right.
but intentionally did not sign for it until the date that he did. We actually was able to.
Yeah, and I think you should relay this to your client. I mean, he was at a meeting, he was instructed as to how to handle the property, and then a couple of days later, we were back out there and had to have the Scituate Police Department there because he just moved ahead and decided to work on the property despite what he was told to do there. So we're not taking it very lightly. We can dance around some of this stuff, which is fine, but he's got some issues and we're gonna get at him one way or the other.
No, I understand, and I'll hold off on the substantive issues, and I think there are issues that are debatable in that
Sure.
regard. One of the things I'd like to clarify, I had the opportunity to review the hearing, at the last hearing, the discussion, and there was discussion about the order including the backyard landscaping. And although I don't believe it's that aspect is in the order, the commission considered that there should be no work back there.
Absolutely.
And if a new order is issued, I would request that the backyard landscaping be not part of that, any order. And the reason for that is, as you know, the storm wiped away the existing lawn there, and the loam that was spread out in the backyard was replacing what was lost in the storm. And it was an existing lawn. And so therefore, that really is not subject to the Wetlands Act. It's maintaining the existing landscape. And it's, what, June 18th, my client would like to be able to move forward and get that before the loam dries up and blows away. Would like to get that seeded and watered and established so it doesn't create any further problems out there.
But he is in the floodplain, and he's adding fill in the floodplain.
It's
And-
replacing loam.
Well, it's a little different than that, and I was out there and looked at it, and there is more to it, and we do afford people the opportunity to do that if they come in and get permission and go through the correct channels. It's when people choose to do things outside of that, that they run amok of the commission, and that's what we feel happened in that site, that, we did afford him the opportunity to look at some of that. He was here with his engineer. We told him what we needed for information, and instead they chose just to go to work. So that's why we have enforcement orders.
I understand, and I don't want to spend the night debating this, but my understanding is, that yes, there has not been a great relationship with the Concom on this, and I'm coming into this fresh, but when I look at it, I see maintaining and replacing an existing lawn that was wiped out by a storm. If it isn't within the scope of the DEP's emergency certification, it certainly is a right that is outside the scope of the Wetlands Act of the bylaw. So I understand that, there may be some tension between my client and the board. There are rules, and I am going to help my client comply with them.
Sure.
But my understanding is, from reading the act and the bylaw, that maintaining an existing lawn is not subject to the Wetlands Act of the bylaw.
I think it's adding material, adding additional fill in a floodplain which is the jurisdiction of this commission. And what we were looking for is some information on how much material was placed, and we asked for some simple calculations on that and did not get any information. And there was no erosion control in an area that potentially could silt into other places. And he has the potential in that location to divert water runoff or whatever onto his neighbors, and I think that is part of our purview.
Are you talking about the front of the property?
The back property as well.
Right. Well, there's no erosion control there right now, and
He was instructed to get erosion control in place with the area that he worked on. There was no erosion control done with anything on the site, but he was instructed to get erosion control into the backyard, get some information from the engineer, and really secure that property so that he didn't have this runoff or dust or whatever. I think I told him to seed it with ryegrass, which would what we would tell most people to do. Get something on there that will keep things from shifting or being dusty or whatever. So he got some clear direction on that.
just to clarify, is he allowed to put erosion control down and put ryegrass down and water it?
That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah.
But he can't mow it. He's not supposed to be mowing that whole yard,
Until he comes in with a plan.
Yes.
front and back.
All right, well, that's a bit of a clarification. So,
But he needs to come to the commission and say, here's what I'm doing. I mean,
right, and I think it's scheduled for 60 days for the last hearing,
right.
is my understanding. But prior to that, he's allowed to put rye seed down
And leave it alone.
Yeah.
and, thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
we had asked for a plan,
We did. We want that plan as soon as possible, but
but not the notice, there was a plan that,
of the backyard,
of the backyard, right. which
so that
have
we
not
can get an
received.
idea of how much material is there. But regardless of whether the plan or not, we want erosion control, and we want to stabilize that. And he can stabilize that with ryegrass.
And there, just so we're clear, that new information where the police had to go out because work was being done despite the cease and desist.
Right.
And the order not to mow or to fiddle with the backyard.
And he did
Which is
both.
what he was doing with machinery, so.
And just so I understand, was that additional work regarding the backyard or around the foundation?
This was in the backyard.
Yeah, okay. I think
Amy was at, on a seminar. I actually went there, because I got a call from the office, so I was there. The machine was there, there's no erosion control. Nothing had been clarified with the office, and they were going full launch into completing the lawn. So,
okay. Well, I will instruct my client to do the erosion control, ryegrass, and get a plan in for whatever the next hearing is.
yep, thank
And
you.
get that squared away.
And
Okay.
no mowing. He mowed the front yard since we told him no mowing.
Oh, he can't mow the front yard
No.
either?
No.
No mowing at all, period.
The whole idea is,
This is
this is supposed to be erosion control and avoid sediment runoff and things like that. We're not gonna, otherwise someone just goes in, throws it along, keeps mowing, and we're gonna chase this thing for
20
years,
years.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay,
And we still have to reissue the enforcement order, don't we?
right. Do we want to take that in a vote? Just,
Well, you know what, I would ratify what you have as proposed.
Mhm.
And I'll seek counsel, see if you need to issue a second replacement enforcement, which you can ratify again. You know what I mean, if necessary, but I don't believe you can actually appeal an enforcement order. So, I don't know, but I can get some guidance on that, because I'm not sure.
okay,
So that would be my recommendation.
all right. Cover as many bases as we
Yeah.
need to.
Okay,
So,
so I'll make a motion that we ratify the enforcement order that we feel is in place at the moment.
For Boyage on 23 Oceanside?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye, thank you, Richard.
Okay,
I'm confused.
sure.
What's being ratified right now?
Was the enforcement order that we already had issued?
It had already expired, wasn't scheduled.
Well, but Amy's saying that she'll talk with town council about it as well. So, I mean, we could certainly vote for another enforcement order at this time as well.
I'll make a motion that we issue an
If
enforcement
necessary.
order. You want to do it?
Sure.
Yes.
A second.
Enforcement order, a second enforcement order on 23 Oceanside to cease and desist all work,
With the exception of
Of planting, right.
with
stabilizing.
the exception of stabilizing, planting ryegrass.
Nope.
And
That's
no
it.
mowing.
In the
No mowing.
backyard.
And no,
Water.
And no mowing,
front or back.
front or back.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay?
One way or another, it's going to be covered.
Good.
Now, do we ratify that? It's not we issue.
Do we need to ratify if we voted it? Do we need to?
A
I mean, the
second-
whole idea is
second
you
one.
issue an enforcement order, then we ratified it. In this case, we've just voted it.
Right,
So we're done.
okay.
Moving on.
If we did it wrong, we'll find out. 35 Jericho Road?
I'm the owner
Sure.
for that property.
And your name is?
My name is Rebecca Regan, Becky Regan. And first of all, I want to thank Amy.
Yes.
I spoke with Amy this morning. My husband and I opened up the letter this morning and we're beside ourselves. We had no idea we were doing anything wrong. Sorry.
That's okay.
So we totally are taking it very seriously and are willing to do whatever we need to do to make it right. This all started with us wanting to put in an asphalt driveway for our boys to play basketball on.
Yeah.
And my husband met with Pat, it was over a year ago at this point. And he came out to the property and looked at the driveway and talked about the fact that there would be some, he didn't say we couldn't do it, he just said we would need to file and come before the committee in order to do that, and that there would probably be some trade-offs, potentially us planting some certain types of flowers and trees and stuff, and maybe taking up a cement walkway that we had. My kids have a lot of health issues, so fast forward a year, we've been busy with that, and we recently were talking and just wanted to quickly get something in place so that they could play basketball. So this project started with us deciding to, instead of going through what we thought would be a lengthy process of getting approval for an asphalt driveway, instead putting in a permeable tile court in the backyard, which I brought to show you guys. We also ended up through that, we are enclosing, and we've completely stopped all work as of this morning. We were supposed to hydro seed the lawn, we called and canceled that this morning. But we enclosed what will be the basketball court with timbers, and then we decided to level, we did not think this was wrong, level the lawn to the timbers with loom. We also wanted to cover a lot of glass that got brought in through the storms. And honest to goodness, we didn't think, through the conversation my husband had with Pat, we totally thought that as long as it was permeable, it wouldn't be an issue. So we are willing to do whatever we need to do to make it right. But I want to thank you for letting us get in here tonight, because both of us felt very sick all day. So that's the situation.
Okay.
What a difference in attitude.
So we understand that people get this miscommunication and whatnot, and there's a process to go through as well. You're not going to jail or anything.
I thought I was with the letter.
Nope, we're not gonna do that.
But obviously, you're in a resource area, you're next to the marsh. That site needs to be protected and go through a process to do that. I haven't had a chance to get out there. I think Amy, you did. So where do they stand right now with the site? What's the best process to go through at this time?
Well, you know, seeing that Rebecca's come forward and wants to do the right thing rather than ratifying an EO on this, I think that we could go for an after-the-fact filing.
They're not doing any more work until we get this done, right?
Right.
Is there something that they should do? Is there any erosion control, any
My recommendation was to put erosion control along the backside of the salt marshes to give some protection. And
how-
potentially seed that too.
Yeah. How close are they to the,
Right, it's right up
okay.
to
Right,
the
that's-
marsh, yeah.
So
Which
the
was
asphalt
based
driveway's
on-
right up to the salt marsh?
No. So it's, the property on Jericho, it's actually the reason I caught it was it's in a pretty visible location, right across from Old Pier 44. So you couldn't miss, and I was like, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? So the driveway's in the front of the house by the road, and there's a backyard, which was lawn. So, and I looked on an aerial, and you can see that it was established lawn before.
Mhm.
So I do believe that, you know, they're adding some material to level out the yard a little bit, you know, reestablish the lawn. So I think that that's fine. The more specifics about the planned basketball court and the pervious area, you know, we should probably know a little bit more about the complete project. And depending on exactly what it is, hopefully a request for determination would be appropriate.
Okay.
Which would be similar to what we would do with a project like this.
So what do we want to give them for direction right now, aside from erosion control? So erosion control is just a silt sock type thing that would go around your property. The idea on that is we get any rain or anything like that, we don't want any silt or mud or anything running into the marsh. We want to protect that. So we want erosion control. And then is the site fairly level, graded?
It's a level site, land subject to coastal storm flowage and walk right to salt marsh.
Should it be some kind of seed or something to
I think
just
so.
stabilize it, the same?
Given the direction we just gave the last property owner,
Okay,
it seems like recommended course of action.
okay.
And a filing deadline, if we can get it in to us actually by next Monday, we can get on for
the next meeting.
July 9th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which would be good if yeah, I think you can do that. We can help work it.
Okay.
Yeah.
An RDA is
It's an
not a
RDA,
real
that's what you want.
difficult filing.
So request for determination is kind of a simplified version. If the work that you're doing isn't complex or fairly simple or straightforward, so I think that's the best approach. Okay. And questions, help with that, come back into the office and
We
do
will.
that. So just that product, does that just get laid down on top of the,
It's laid down on top of, like crushed stones.
I see. Okay.
So the water goes through, oh, I see.
That goes right
Yeah,
through.
I see.
Yeah,
Well, again, we'll get into all that during the IDA, but
Absolutely.
it's
appreciate it.
interesting.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thanks a lot.
Thank you for coming in.
So we're clear on these pieces. You want to move to the extensions, or you want to do the RDA?
To the extensions,
You mean the continuance?
Well, we have to, extensions for those FEMA grant ones, we need extensions for those. We can vote them at the end of the meeting.
yeah, we can vote those.
All right,
vote
so
those later.
let's do this RDA. Parker, 122 Oceanside Drive, rebuild an existing deck.
Hi, my name is Joe Joyce, Joyce Builders, here in Scituate.
Joe, let me just read the spiel, and then you can jump in. On June 18, 2018, during the 6:15 meeting at Town Hall, the Scituate Conservation Commission will act on the request of Lorraine Parker for a determination of applicability of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate Wetlands Bylaw to rebuild a deck on property located at 122 Oceanside Drive, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Thank you. My name is Joe Joyce, Joyce Builders, here in Scituate. I work with my brothers Franny and John. I'm here on the Parker, Lauren Parker and Jacqueline Haas's behalf at 122 Oceanside Drive. They were hit in a storm, as many people were. Their deck is 16 feet out, about 35 feet wide. It was, as you could see, destroyed. The stones came in and pushed it right up. But when we looked at the deck, we knew that underneath it, the sonotubes were also compromised. And so I came to see Amy and also Bob Vogel and discussed what we should do with this. It's our opinion that the sonotubes should all be replaced. John Queen of Structures Engineer designed the sonotubes to be put in here. We're designing them in a fashion that they could be used if we lift this house, which I'm recommending to the homeowners to do. And so the 5 tubes right out at the front, we could see they're compromised. We couldn't get underneath to see the others. We could see that this deck is spanning too far and doesn't have the proper support. So we're showing here taking out what's there, replacing the deck to the same dimensions with up to 12 sonotubes. And those sonotubes will be shown on the plan. They're 14-inch sonotubes, 6 feet down, with rebar in them.
So you're basically just replacing existing,
We're replacing.
you're not putting any.
Well, this could be missing some sonotubes,
Okay.
and if they are, we'll put them in because they should be underneath the deck. I could tell structurally, it's not sound. So,
Richard?
I'm good.
Lisa?
I don't know, I've been seeing it.
Jen?
I'm good.
Amy, any comments on that?
Well, the project, I mean, it's right there, on Oceanside Drive, so it's
Penny, can I see that?
Sure. A zone. It is replacing sonotubes under the deck. I think photographs really show a lot here. We did go over the project a number of times. And so, you know, where the deck in the B zone is not ideal since it is existing. Everything is telling that you can't rebuild it. So, here's a negative.
Okay. Anybody in the audience that wants to speak to this?
Is there any problem or issue with how it was gonna get the old deck out, away? I'll ask
We'll
you
cut that up, and we'll carry it out and put it in a dumpster, which we have out front of the house right now. We have a concrete dumpster in there, and when we take out the concrete, we'll throw that in the concrete dumpster. We take out the wood, we'll throw that in the wood dumpster, which we have out front.
And you have ample room without infringing on any of the neighbors?
We do.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
And the sonotubes, Joe, are going to be poured in place or precast?
They'll be poured in place. So what we'll do, we'll go down, we'll do 3 by 3 by 1 with rebar in it, pour, we'll use a pumper here, so we won't bring concrete trucks up. We'll pump it from the street. And then we'll put rebar in that, and we'll put the 14-inch tube on top of that, and again, we'll pump that from the street.
And we have a plan of that too, the structural?
No,
Yes,
that's-
you have John
oh, well,
Queen's
that's the one I-
engineered plan there.
This is Paul Marabito's for the site. I guess I
That's
don't
all
have
I
a copy.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Sure.
Great, thank you.
No. I have faith in this.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Okay, I'll make a motion for a -3.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mind if we keep this set, Joe?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Keep that.
Jacob Hatch, condo Scanzillo, 10 Driftway, they've requested a continuance to 7/23.
I make a motion to continue this way to July 23rd at 6:20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Town of Scituate DPW 2632 Gardner Road drainage easement. They're requesting a continuance
I make a motion, we continue 2632
To the 9th?
Gardner Road to July 9th at 6:20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Want to do the other two while you're at it?
Sure. Before we go to the Ann Vinyl Road, I'll just continue these other two in case anybody's here for that. So on June 18th, 2018, at 6:30 PM in the Town Hall, Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40, Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Thomas Charbonneau, thank you, trust to install riprap revetment on property located at 178 Central Ave, Hummerock. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. So
I make a motion.
there's no one here for this tonight. We're not going to discuss it. It's just going to get continued to the 9th.
I make a motion, we continue 178 Central Ave to July 9th at 6:20.
Second.
All
All in favor?
in favor? Thanks, Rich.
Aye.
I just want to go to the next one.
I know.
On June 18th, 2018, at 6:40 PM, the Town Hall, Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Robert
Gracie.
to install riprap revetment on property located at 180 Central Ave, Hummerock. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
I make a motion, we continue 180 Central Ave to July 9th at 6:20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Somebody's got,
Ship's coming in.
the ship's it's coming in.
Okay. Now we-
Okay, so then we're back to Nelson at 127 Ann Vinyl Road.
I think we just oh,
Yep.
there's changes too. We made a few changes.
Yep.
Jeff, can you spin that a little bit?
So they
If
can
anybody's
see
got
it.
an interest, we'll kind of, that's good.
All right, good evening, Jeff Assett with Morse Engineering, and this is a continued NOI filing for a septic repair at 127 Ann Vinyl. Since the last time we met 2 weeks ago, the septic really has not been changed. It's still the same septic system. The changes we made were we added an erosion control barrier at the, along the wetland line behind the house. We also added a combination of a stone trench and a swale along the right property line, directing some of the surface runoff back to the wetland. And you also wanted us to document the work that's being done on the house.
Correct.
The work being done on the house does not expand the footprint, it's repairing and replacing portions. So in the front of the house, I'm gonna give you photographs. In the front, they're rebuilding the deck, and they put 5 new sonotubes in.
Yeah, so.
The sonotubes are in the same location as the old ones they took some guys out. And it's my understanding that they were put in by hand. There's no equipment. They also are repairing this portion of this 5x10 bump out. And the reason they did that is the supports are really, they were inadequate. See, it's almost falling in. So again, that'll be rebuilt in the same location on some new sonotubes. And then in the back, they're replacing the rear deck. And in the back, they're keeping some of the foundation and footings for that, but they did have to put in 2 new sonotubes. So again, that work does not expand the footprint. And overall, I think this project will have no adverse impact on the wetlands because we're taking the cesspool out of the wetland and moving it about 60 feet away from the wetland. That septic's going in an area that's currently gravel. And all of the work for the house is going back in the same footprint.
Thank you.
Okay, Penny, any question?
I think my only question is, the Board of Health has approved,
They did, yes.
so if you're set to go there. Thank you. No.
I'm good
okay.
now.
Lisa?
Nothing.
Jen? Amy?
Looks good, I mean, it was approved by Board of Health, so.
Okay. Jeff, what's the pitch on that swale? How much pitch can you get in?
Sure, it's about a 1%.
So it's not a lot.
No, it's not, but I think having the stone below it too, having your foot of stone below, kind of capture the water directly below the surface.
Okay.
It's just a flat area. That's really the steepest swale we can do working with the grade that's there.
All right. Do we have anything in this about placing a material or anything? I mean, it's just such a tight site. I guess they're just gonna have to load this material out. Just wanna make sure no materials,
Yeah, I mean, they do have some room kind of over the tanks. They have about 35 feet from the retaining wall to the property line. So I would picture them probably putting the tanks in first and then working on the leaching field, and they can use that area for staging. But
So-
it's right off the road too, so when they deliver the sand, they can dump it right in front of the leaching field.
I'm thinking more of the stuff that, the material that they dig out.
Oh yeah, they'll probably load that right into a truck.
Because if they were stockpiling that, that's almost like going right onto the neighbor's property, so,
And they don't need that material.
right. So I think it's important that anything like that just get removed. I know there's a fence along that right side. Just wonder if there's a need for any more erosion control on either of the property lines. I don't know. You know, we know it's a tight site.
I leave it up to you. It's very flat. It's going to get done this summer during a dry time. It's probably only going to take me a week to do it. But if you wanted maybe a silt fence up the 2 property lines,
That might be enough, just to keep everything on the property and,
define the property lines.
yeah.
Can it be conditioned that they take that, when they take it out, it's immediately taken out and not stored? Or left there at all?
Yeah, we could just say halt, remove it.
Immediately?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we could put that in a condition along with the silt fence. I think it's just, it's such a tight site, and, I mean, obviously, they need to control anything that they're doing there, so I think that would work.
And a lot of times you see the contractors dig that soil out and then use it on the side slopes.
Right.
And you don't need that here because of the retaining
Yeah,
wall.
there's
So
nothing.
they can, I'll just get it out of there.
Okay.
Okay, so review those 2 again?
Any material that's excavated needs to just be removed immediately rather than stockpiled on the site. And then some sort of, I don't think it needs a silt sock, but a silt fence.
Straw wattle?
Or even a silt fence just run down the sides. It's more a matter of keeping everything in, whichever one they want to use.
Okay.
Containment.
All right. Did anybody in the audience want to speak to it? Sure. You just need to name and address too, so.
Yes, Paul Mendez. I live right next door. And everyone, as you know, that, I live right next door on the left, if you look at the house, it's on the left-hand side. Well, I'm not gonna take no more time because.
Sure.
One, I know this is the wetlands, and I asked you a while ago, I said, what happens when you pour cement or you pour stone within 50 feet of wetlands? You told me it would make you rip it up. That's what you told me anyway.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mendez.
I came here, I think it was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I asked you, I said, what happens when you pour cement or stone within 50 feet of wetland? You told me, it's on the tape. You explained to me that you'd make them rip it up.
If they were building.
Without a permit.
Without a permit, they would get a cease and desist, which they did. And then they.
That was on the building. That was on the.
Yeah.
Built, not the wetlands. Okay.
So they've got a cease and desist to not work in the building. And
On the
then,
building lot.
right. And then, now they're before us for a septic system, and what we asked for at the same time is information on work that they did at the house, so they can be part of this project, which was replacing, it appears to me, existing foundation. They didn't expand it, they didn't dig beyond it, but they're replacing the foundation or footings to support that house, is what we're seeing.
Correct. There was
Right.
no permit pulled.
I understand that. We know that, and that's why they were stopped. So now we're trying to get to that point where,
All right.
and so what we're telling them to do is in the back of the house with, unfortunately, this house is built right on top of the wetland, just like your house.
Right.
At one time, it was probably a wetland that was filled.
Right.
So what we've instructed them to do is put erosion control at the back of the house so that any earth that they disturb doesn't go out into the wetland.
Okay.
And we can also, what we're gonna be, depending on how we do this project, we either deny it, or we approve it, or we condition it. So we can say to them, just like these couple of ones here, we don't want them stockpiling any material on the site, that we want additional erosion control to make sure that they don't get off-site. If we think there's something else that's needed to ensure that the wetlands aren't impacted. Unfortunately, it's a pre-existing property that's right up against the wetlands. So we have to sort of work with some of this.
No, I understand. Last time I was here, you asked me to bring in a copy from the wetlands.
Sure.
I did bring that copy.
Yep. Yeah, sure, happy to take it. And we know that there was an old flagging on your side of the property.
Correct. I do have pictures of the wetland plants that are here.
Sure.
And I'm not sure, I did hire a consultant.
Yep.
But even before I did, I know that there's when you put either a septic tank or a leaching field, you have to be at least 10 feet away from a property line.
That's up to the Board of Health.
Well, the only thing is, I got here at 6:10, and I guess their meeting was at 6.
I see.
We were told, matter of fact, that's the reason why the other gentleman didn't come, because we were told that before it went any further, that you wanted a redesign of the thing. You said, before we go any further, we want to redesign that, and then he didn't think that we had to go, and I spoke to him, I said, I think another meeting's today, and he said, no, he says, Frank told us at the next meeting, this and that, and he didn't show up. I showed up like at 6:10, and they said, oh, we already had the meeting, and we already granted it.
I see.
So, that, I spoke to the DP, then I have to go.
Sure.
In fact, I was here and I told them, I said, I'm gonna appeal it. And she says, well, you can't appeal it. You have to hire an attorney, so I guess I have to hire an attorney. So I will hire an attorney. And, you know, to be honest with you, if everything was done correctly and done honestly, I wouldn't really have a problem with it. But it just really aggravates me that I had to go in front of I had to go in front of all you guys, do what I had to do, and it's come to that. It's like, you know, so I didn't want to even come, I wasn't even gonna come today. I was just gonna say, you know something, just gonna appeal it anyways. Put it
Right.
$50. And-
So Paul, obviously, we would prefer that people do it the right way.
Correct.
And you've
But
been
there's-
sitting here for a little while,
Right, and
and
this
you
is-
can see where people either inadvertently or intentionally don't do that. Some
Well-
people make a mistake, other people just do it to see and see.
But buildings, Frank-
So we have to go through a process
Right.
now to get there. They were told to stop, they came to us, and they went to the Board of Health and had an engineer design their project, and then, I don't know what the purview is for the Board of Health. I don't know about the setbacks, I don't know if they're waivers.
Right.
I'm not on the Board
I
of.
didn't have a chance to argue
Yeah,
the point.
I'm not on the Board of Health.
Right.
But I do know in the case of conservation, when there's a pre-existing property, then we have to try to work with them. We can't say to them, listen, you gotta rip 10 feet off your house. It was already there.
Right.
We can say to them, we don't want you to go any further, and we want erosion control, and you gotta stay within this parameter. But we really don't have the right to take someone's property from them.
I do agree.
So what we're trying to do is do the best thing we can to protect the wetland, and at the same time, we look towards the neighbors to make sure that you're not adversely affected in the process.
To be honest with you, I understand, I can see your concern. I guess, but, you know, I mean, I guess this is the way I did it. I mean, I went to Amy, I spoke with her, I explained to her what was going on. She did nothing about it. I did a call again, I went there, I tried speaking to her. I heard her type on the back saying, oh, I can't talk. And I said, oh, I guess you can't talk. So I left. But anyways, it's just, I went to the bill inspector, I had an argument with the bill inspector, I said, he's pouring cement. It's just, I tried warning everybody,
Sure.
but no one was listening. So now it's gotta go to the board overseas, I guess. You know what I mean? And it's sad that, you know what I mean?
I absolutely, I mean, you and I had a phone conversation
Correct.
probably a month ago.
Correct, right.
And I said to you, I've already looked into it. I was informed that they had a cease and desist order at the time that you and I spoke,
Okay, right.
and that they weren't progressing with the work.
Right,
Is
well,
my-
that was in the building.
Right.
But I think I asked, in fact, I've learned pretty well lately. I've been learning more, but I do everything on email now.
Yep,
I emailed the bill inspector, I emailed Amy.
sure.
I've never got no reply, but that's okay.
Well,
But
I'm trying to figure out what I can answer for you
No,
in terms
I know,
of.
to be honest with you, you know what I'm really asking for?
Sure.
Is-
Well, I don't know, so go ahead.
Why is no one being penalized? Couple bucks? You know, that's not gonna hurt nobody, that's, you know what I mean? It's just,
We do have enforcement orders with fines that we can levy if we need to. They're not big fines. But what we try to do, if people don't respond, if they just ignore us and don't do anything, then we start fining them. And believe me, it's not a simple process.
no, but they
So, in this case, the applicant got an engineer, they stopped work, they didn't continue to do the work, they retained an engineer, they figured out what they needed to do to get this house in compliance, and they're going down that road. And that's what we look for with people. Like, again, people make mistakes. If they work with the commission and are willing to do to comply with it, I'm not saying it's an awesome situation. I mean, if this were a vacant lot and they were coming to the commission today, you know, more than likely would not be a house there. But they do have a structure there, so, and they're very limited. So we have to go through a process as well.
I agree, you know, I mean, I be honest with you, I pretty much guarantee there probably will be there will be a house there.
Yep.
But what I'm saying is that why wasn't there, like the bill, I told the bill inspector, why is he pouring concrete? And he says, he is not, he.
I can't answer,
me.
yeah, I know,
Right,
I
but
can't.
to be
And
honest with you, I know that it's all being taped, and what I'm saying is.
Sure.
You're hearing it from, what I'm telling you, exactly what's happening, and you know what's happening.
we don't like it either, and we understand your frustration, and there's folks in this room that have the same thing. There's folks that come in here and say, why can't I do this? They come and ask for, we're down on the beach in the summer, and people are cleaning up stuff, and we tell one person they can't do something one way, and then Saturday and Sunday, somebody else goes in and knocks it down, and then we go through the process. And as a commission, it's frustrating as well. We'll try to do the parts that are right. You know, there's some people that will go down your road on the speed limit, and there's other people that will speed. You know, we're gonna do the part that we can do, and I think we've tried to do the best we can.
No, in matter of fact, Steve's not here today, he's on the boat. He just wanted to me to explain to you guys that if this does happen, and they do what they do, if any water goes inside of his cellar,
No, and
who's gonna be responsible for
well,
it?
he made it clear, and that's why we asked
Right.
them to create this drain to run down that side. And
Right.
that's the best we can look for at
But-
that spot.
But the only thing, that's towards his side, that's towards his windows.
I understand, but,
Right, I mean, he just wants to know who's gonna be responsible, just in case it
well,
does go through.
the responsibility will be the owner of the property, and then, you know, he has recourse through all that,
Right.
all right? And the engineer that designed it is saying that it will work. I mean, I just asked him that question, asked him how much pitch was there. He answered that it's only 1%, but they're also putting stone in that. They're trying to figure out the best way to do it.
Because I could say, in the springtime, in the winter, it just fills right up.
Yep.
I don't know where the water's gonna go, the water just collects right there anyway,
Right.
so. I have no idea, but.
Yep.
Like I said, you know, I don't wanna waste anybody's more time.
Okay, well, and I appreciate your frustration,
No.
and we'll do the best that we can with it as well. All right? Thank you.
Can I make a motion to close?
Anybody else? Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, I'm sorry for everything.
No, it's your neighborhood and your home, so you have the right to do that. Thank you.
I
Penny,
make a motion to close.
Second.
do we have all the pieces in for the orders?
think
We're
so.
good with that?
Yeah. Amy wrote,
Okay.
to go.
Motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you very much.
So a closing means that we've stopped any further conversation. The commission will write a set of orders for this project with all the things that they think are pertinent to this project to make it comply.
And you're gonna vote on that at the next hearing, or?
Yes.
Okay, is that in 2 weeks?
Yep.
Yeah.
Actually, it's 3 in this case.
3 weeks. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Town of Scituate, South River, north of C Street, Marshfield Avenue, dredging. On June 18th, 2018, at 6:50 PM, the Town Hall of Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetland hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40, Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of the Town of Scituate to perform improvements and maintenance dredging of approximately 30,250 cubic yards in the South River on property located in Humrock and Marshfield. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
Don't breathe.
Good evening.
Good evening. You're going away.
Good evening. My name is Christine Player. I am the consultant that's been working with the town for numerous years on this maintenance dredging project in the South River. I'm with Nancy Durfee from the town of Scituate and Mike DeMeo, the harbor master from Marshfield, but also the shellfish constable in Scituate. So I just want to give a brief overview of the project. This project, first of all, is maintenance dredging. So the areas that we're dredging, as you can see, hopefully, I don't want to touch that thing. There's 3 areas. There's Area A, which is out near the mouth. Then we come into Area B, which pretty much is from the beginning of the proper part of the river, about 1,800 feet down to here. Then there's nothing being dredged until we get down to this area here, and this is Area C that goes all the way down to the C Street Bridge. So these areas were dredged back in 2007. At that time, the project was actually done mechanically, and the material went offshore to the Mass Bay disposal site, which is about 25 miles offshore from the shoreline area. Right now, the towns are proposing to collectively dredge Area A, which is about 9,900 cubic yards, Area B, which is about the same, and Area C, which is a little over 10,000 cubic yards, so we're looking at a total of about 30,000 and change. The material's been sampled, it's been tested, and the material's been deemed suitable by the Army Corps of Engineers, who has the oversight jurisdiction for suitability to dispose of sediments offshore. So the plan is Area A is given priority because of the significant shoaling that has been out there and has, when we first did this survey back in 2013, so you can imagine the various storms that have come through, add in this March, conditions extremely hazardous. Included in your packet were letters from both town harbor masters expressing their concern of public safety and the need to move forward with this dredging as soon as possible. So Area A is probably the most hazardous in terms of conditions, and it would be a priority if in fact the town had to phase this project. Certainly, it'd be nice just to do it in one season and get all of the 30,000 cubic yards out. However, that's really going to come down to the funding that becomes available. Also included in your packet were cost estimates for this project, and we're looking collectively for the whole project to cost a little over $2 million, and that's for it to go offshore.
$2 million?
Mm-hmm. Dredging is not cheap.
Nothing is today.
Thankful that it's you're pretty much looking at a 10-year cycle here, and it's time, and it's overdue. This site has previously been attempted to be hydraulically dredged so that the material could be pumped onto shoreline areas, and it's failed miserably twice. So we don't have that option of bringing in a hydraulic dredge and pumping directly to a beach area. Every time you touch dredge sediment, the cost goes up insurmountably. So for a dredge to be for the river to be dredged mechanically, it'd be put in a dump scow, it's towed offshore, it's only handled once. The dump scow has levers which open on the bottom and the material is discharged. All of the dredging in all of the areas are all subtidal. There's no intertidal impacts. Everything is within an existing authorized, previously dredged footprint. All of the history and detail was in your packet, so you can go into the depth of the history if you wish. I'm just here to present the real need to move forward with this project, and we request your approval to do so. A couple other comments is because the river is located in both towns, we're also seeking permission from the Marshfield Conservation Commission as well, and we'll be meeting with them tomorrow evening.
Oh, great.
Mm-hmm. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, let's start.
Probably my only question is, I mean, I think it's great. Got a dredge, put it back out there and come back in again. But what do you think you can do this year? How much do you have funding?
So I'll let Nancy or Mike speak to that. I know that there's a new state funding program that is out there to assist
So you're
in
still
dredging.
looking for money?
So yes, but as far as town fundings, I'll let Nancy and Mike speak to each town.
So the town of Scituate has cobbled together at least $500,000 almost to do Section A, which we anticipate that section being the most expensive. We're looking at about $1 million to secure that much to do that Section A. We would like to get that done.
By the mouth.
By the mouth.
Right.
Okay.
So we're hoping to get that section done because of the navigational issues that are going to happen through that area. And I'll let Marshfield speak to their funding.
Good evening, Mike DeMille, Marshall Harbor Master, and also a Scituate resident. So currently, Marshall has about $171,000 allocated, and we'll be probably seeking more funds at the October town meeting in Marshfield. But we're really hoping to get state funding through Secretary Ash's office, because collectively the towns can't really afford to be dredging for $2 million on an average cycle. I mean, seawalls cost enough, dredging's even more costly. So it's really our job to seek some grant funding and some state funding to help out the cause. That's the main push. So, as far as the navigation in the rivers, the Coast Guard's been in moving buoys around to put in the best water. Boats have been going around quite a bit. Even public safety vessels have hit there. Most recently, this last week. It's also supports commercial fishing in the rivers as well. So there's a few fishermen that fish the river commercially. And unfortunately, we would have loved to put on the beach, as Nancy would too, but it's not cost prohibitive, unfortunately. There's not enough volume to put on the beach. Unfortunately, it's a navigation, it's a safety issue, so the cheapest and fastest alternative is to put it offshore, unfortunately.
Through the sediment sampling, they also found that there were some compatibility issues. The fines were the sands were much finer than they had anticipated. It wasn't as much cobble, and so with that, some of that material would not have been conducive for that area and would have ended up in a resource area that we had anticipated that it would move quickly to that spot. So,
Any other questions?
So best case, if there's some state funding, some could be done this fall?
That is the ultimate goal. We have filed all permit applications. Like I said, we'll be meeting with Town of Marshfield tomorrow. Everything's into DEP, Army Corps, CZM. There's layers upon layers of regulatory approvals that we need for dredging. Everything is in place, and fingers crossed. The hope is to get permits issued by late summer, early fall, so that we could put this out to bid and get everything done. We will likely have to adhere to dredge windows. There was a fisheries letter, I assume you saw that. The time of year that they had indicated for winter flounder was no dredging from February 1st to July 15th or 1st?
First.
So with that being said, the likelihood of any dredging happening before fall, because of the recreational boating window, obviously, we'd be looking probably at a start date sometime in October, November-ish, and through February 1st, we could dredge. The volume is very manageable for that dredge window, and so fingers crossed, funding, permits issued. The hope is to get the dredge out there this fall.
I'm stating the obvious. You've got several marinas that are directly affected by this in both towns.
For sure.
And so
it's been a problem. I know some of those marinas are pursuing permission to dredge as well independently. A couple years back, they did do some dredging south of the C Street Bridge. We came before you folks for that, which Marshfield was a sponsor on. So yeah, it's unfortunately the world of dredging is an expensive endeavor, and there's very limited contractors available to do this work. The dump scows that go offshore have to be Coast Guard certified. All the pieces of equipment are very unique, and that's what makes the dollars really climb up there.
Sure. Lisa?
So when Marshfield did their dredging, how did they handle the dredging?
That was done mechanically. At the time that first phase was done, there was a lot of pilings under the C Street Bridge. That was really the precipice of that dredging effort initially, is when they widened the span of that bridge many years ago. There were a lot of remnant piles that supported the old pilings that supported the bridge. So we went in with a mechanical dredge, pulled out all the pilings because that was a hazard to navigation, and dredged about 800 cubic yards in that initial area, and that was actually unloaded down at the Wrexham boat ramp and trucked to Wrexham, the public beach, and disappeared instantaneously. It was about 800 cubic yards. Fast forward to, was it last year or 2 years ago? I'm losing sense of time. Yeah, the county dredge made an attempt to come up from Barnstable County to hydraulically dredge the remainder, and it was not successful. So the idea is to go back, circle back. We have to use a mechanical dredge. I mean, we've had two very well-documented projects, one north of the C Street Bridge, the other south, that a hydraulic dredge just cannot cannot pump that material. It has to be done mechanically.
Okay, but when Marshfield did it, they put it back on the beach. They didn't dump it offshore, correct?
Well, the difference that we're talking about there was, first of all, it was 100% funded by the town of Marshfield. So that came down to their budget and their ability to fund that project.
Okay.
The other real difference that we're talking about here is there were many shoreline areas considered. There was a very deep and exclusive shoreline assessment for many areas within this filing, if you looked at the alternatives analysis. The real problem becomes public beach area. And under Mass DEP Chapter 91 regulations, any publicly dredged site, you cannot beneficially reuse sediments on privately owned beach or shoreline areas unless property owners sign a public access easement agreement. For many years, the towns were trying to get those in place along Humrock because that was a site that was identified early on in this project as a place to put the material. Albeit that the volume we're talking about, even though it's 30,000 cubic yards, it certainly isn't going to make an impact out there. We're talking about another project that has been also in parallel for raising Central Ave and putting a significant nourishment about. We're talking hundreds of thousands of cubic yards that are really needed to provide protection out there. So besides the efforts of 2.5 years of trying to get easements in place, it just didn't happen. And because of the concern over the public safety and the navigable conditions that are out there, it really came down to money and the fact that easement agreements were not signed by the property owners, and that's the law. So other than holding up the project for something that can't be changed unless you want to file legislation to do so, that's the challenge that we run into out in privately owned properties. Fourth Cliff was also considered, and that's owned by the Air Force, a federal property. And again, 2 years plus in trying to coordinate with the Air Force and asking them for assistance, and it became, we need this agreement, we need that agreement. They had no money to contribute, and it just kept kicking the can down. And time is really becoming of the essence here. We've been trying to get this thing dredged for many years, and here we are.
Then how was it that they were able to put it back onto the beach before?
What beach?
North Humrock, when it was dredged before. How did it ended up back on the beach before, but you can't do it now?
If you're alluding to the late 90s or early 90s, that material was actually trucked in. And it was a FEMA project. It was not, it was very different. It wasn't dredge materials, first of all.
Lisa, are you referring to the project where they, at the dredge project where they had to dump it in the, just offshore?
There was a nearshore dumping.
Is that what you're referring to?
There's a nearshore site adjacent to North Humrock. And to correct myself, some of this in '07 went offshore, but some of it went to that nearshore site. That opportunity was a one and done. Fisheries, everybody said, we'll give you permission to do it this one time, but never again. So that material, some of that material did go to the nearshore site, but again, it's offshore. It's not private properties. It's in the water.
Yeah, because anything below low tide is Army Corps and not private property, correct? It's public.
You can't say that for sure. You have to look at deeded licenses and property lines, which are very difficult to really nail down. Record information is challenging to define where those lines are. A lot of times it's mean low water, which changes. But at the end of the day, the nearshore site was probably in about 10 to 15 feet of water, so it was in Commonwealth waters, per se. It had nothing to do with federal designation, it was state waters.
And how far away is this offshore site that the material's going to be dumped?
About 25 miles. It's off of, I guess, North Shore-wise, it's about 12 miles east of Manchester, Gloucester, up in that area. That's a federal site that's managed by the Army Corps and US EPA. It's a designated site. It's been there, I want to say since the 80s. And it's very stringent evaluation on materials to make sure that dumping does not harm the marine life because it's all open. This material has already been tested, it's been reviewed by the Corps and EPA, and we've already gotten the permission to bring it there, as it's been done so a couple of times in the past.
So taking material away that had come from North Humrock Beach now will be shipped offshore, and then funding has to be found to replace that material and others?
Well, first of all, I don't think anybody can say that the material came from North Hummerock Beach or not. There's many contributing sources at the mouth of that river for where the sand could be coming from. So I think it's hard to say that. As we just went through the presentation, the issues that were faced in trying to find ways to put that material on a shoreline property, aside from which one, it came down to the fact that it would cost probably $4+ million to put 30,000 cubic yards, which really, from a cost benefit, it's not a win. You can buy sand at an upland site for $25 a cubic yard and put it on a beach. So what's getting lost in translation is this is a navigation project. It's dredging, it's maintenance, it's needed to maintain public access and safety within a public waterway. What the regulations require is you to look at alternatives that may be available to put it on the shoreline, but if they're not feasible, they're not feasible. And in this particular case, they're not feasible from cost, they're not feasible because of public access easements, they're not feasible because of federal government contracts that are required to get it out of Forthcliffe. And again, we've been kicking this down the road for multiple years, and now you're having boats ground out. I mean, Mike was telling me one of the harbor master's boats went aground in Scituate. So what?
Let's make that clear.
I didn't want to call anybody out.
They responded to an emergency in the river, and
No, I get it.
so it
They got
happens
stuck.
to the best of us. It happens to everybody.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
That's where the need is, unfortunately.
yeah.
So
The mouth of the river's always been
it's so treacherous. The currents that get through there, it really is a challenging place, and that's another part of where the hydraulic dredge failed. It actually flipped
Right.
many years ago.
Yep.
I was around, I remember that. But so again, we've looked at all the different ways to try to make this happen, and from a cost benefit, it really is prohibitive because, like I said, you could go buy sand for $25 a cubic yard. You're going to end up paying over $100 and something a cubic yard to dredge it, transport it, unload it into a truck it on the beach, spread it on the beach, and you just lose value incrementally every time you have to handle that because we can't directly pump it to the shoreline areas. And it's just unfortunate. But to that point, I know there's other projects in the COG where the town is looking to implement a large-scale nourishment project out on North Hummerock, and that's being pursued at this time. I don't know, Nancy, if you want to.
Yes, we have a public meeting on Monday night as well to talk about the engineering designs for that project on North Hummerock. It's going to be a dune nourishment and roadway elevation project. We've just finalized the engineering, and we're able to present that to the residents so they can ask more specific questions that they had earlier, and these we'll be able to answer more fine questions on that project.
When is that taking place, Nancy?
Monday night, it's going to be at the Scituate High School in the Performance Center, and that's going to be at 6 p.m., not 6 a.m. And also the materials themselves, when we compare them from the river to the beach is definitely a coarse material and much more cobble than what we found in the river. Two of the samples were not suitable at all and could not be part of the project, and also would need chemical analysis because of the fines were so small. And then there were 8 out of 13 that also showed signs that the sand, it was more sand than what's more normal for North Hummerock. That material could not be placed on that beach as suitable for that project. So what we're going to bring in is going to be material that's suitable, and as Christine mentioned, at a more cost-effective way, and engineered as a dune instead of a beach nourishment project, so it won't be splayed out across the beach. We're actually going to build something that's going to be a protection measure for the coastal storms that you're suffering from.
Lisa, any more? Okay. Jen?
Nope.
Amy?
No, I mean, I obviously support the project. I think it looks good. It looks like they're making some good progress with the permitting. There's, obviously other big agencies that weigh in on this, so this is just one of the many steps. So, yeah, I see no reason why we should not close an issue. Or close and...
Yeah. Anybody in the audience, questions or comments with regards to this? Yes, sir.
Fred McMullen, Situate Waterways. We also have discussed this many times and endorsed it for safety reasons, and we've just in the last few months sent a letter on to the selectmen requesting this be done as soon as possible for safety reasons, especially when the voting season's coming up. We're not gonna make it this voting season, but whatever we can get done after, we can surely help the situation.
Sure. Thank you. So, I mean, it seems like for safety reasons, obviously the mouth of the river and those channels are important to get that opened up. Just the amount of use that the river gets and to get people in and out of there and you know, living in Scituate my whole life and hearing the different stories, and the signs there will tell you how dangerous that is and how many lives are lost. So working in that area is critical from a safety standpoint and from navigation. And then further up the river, it's navigation and recreation. It supports a whole bunch of different entities. There's fishermen, lobstermen, commercial people that use the, as well as recreational boaters. And from our standpoint as a commission, obviously we want to make sure that it's done environmentally correctly. Is it done at the right time of year so that other wildlife, fish, whatever, aren't impacted any more than they have to be? And we get information, input on that from fisheries and other spots. And as you point out, there's a whole bunch of different groups that take a look at this. Army Corps, you know, people looking at the way things are shifting. Is this going to work? Is this a waste? It's a maintenance piece, though, that's going to have to continue if we're going to use those areas in this fashion. So making sure that it's done appropriately and at the right time is critical. Do they, you know, some of the ways that this erodes, obviously it's just things shift in there and Mother Nature shifts material, and then there's also the way that people use their boats and whatnot. And as a harbor master, you know, boat speed, that kind of thing, you guys monitor all that and try to make sure that it minimizes the disruption that happens to the marshes and and that's, Nancy, maybe you
Yeah,
can.
Frank, the marshes in Scituate, as well as many places along the coastline now, are showing serious signs of stress and erosion. And it's due to a number of sources. One is sea level rise. The grasses in the marshes were never meant to have water over them for the longer period of time that water is now accessing those marsh areas. We have crab infestation as well that burrow into the peat and create holes, which further to exacerbate the problem and weaken the peat. Yeah, so, and then once those things take hold, and those two things, I believe, along as nitrogen loading as well doesn't help, it causes the edge of the marsh to begin to calve off or to slough. And that's sloughing into the river as well. That material is not conducive for the...
That's peat.
For the benthic of the river system as well. It's not healthy. It's not healthy for the river system, which other things that are dependent upon. We had Sarah Grady before the Board of Selectmen about a month or so ago, talking about what she's doing as far as the Bays Association, as well as the North and South River Association are concerned, and they're taking a look at some of assessing the situation. But I can tell you, it is dismal when I drive by and see what's going on with the marsh. It's one of my favorite areas.
Right.
It's absolutely beautiful.
It's a huge concern.
And it could end up looking as a mud flat in the coming years.
Yeah. Is there a way there could be more no-wake zone signs? Because there's a large section of the South River, and I was watching them today because I was in the river with my grandson, and they come flying by there so fast. All the docks are, and the water just came crashing right into the shore. And it's bad for docks as well as bad for the marsh.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that for both towns. So in Scituate, we had the harbor master and the Scituate police also patrol the south and north rivers as well as ourselves. But if you have a situation like that, if you can get the vessel's name or boat numbers, we can gladly and will find the vessel owner. We had an incident today in Marshfield where a commercial fisherman was fueling at Damon's Point and got waked by a boat. We actually just added 5 cameras to Damon's Point, actually 4 cameras to Damon's Point, for just that reason of people speeding, skiing, doing what they're not supposed to do. But as far as adding more buoys, we can clearly do that. It's not a big deal. It's a cheap expense, but it's no different than having a speed limit sign on the side of the road where the cruiser is sitting there doing radar, and he leaves, and all of a sudden people start speeding again. So unfortunately on the water there's not a ton of resources, but our best defense is people calling us, reporting those vessels, because let's face it, if they're going on the South River, they're moored in the South River somewhere, so they're pretty easy to find. And we find that most times it's kids that are doing this, and rather than give them a ticket for $150, you're better off talking to the parents, and 99 times out of 100, that's where it ends.
Yeah.
So, but it is safety. You're right, it is.
Their cans out of the boat.
And that's the thing too, where if they did cause somebody damage or somebody serious bodily injury, it's a felony. It's arrestable offense under 90B, so it's pretty serious. So, but I work with Steve Moen, and we'll look to address some more, add some more buoys in the rivers for sure.
Okay.
So, no problem.
Thank you.
So I think if someone else doesn't have questions, I think serving on a coastal advisory and working with folks, obviously there's some frustration with not being able to see some of this material get placed out on the beach. It's been discussed, we've talked about it. We get the feedback on the materials. If it's very fine sand, we know that doesn't tend to stick, and we spend a lot of money to place it there, and then it just washes away. And then we also wind up with organics and stuff which we don't want on the beach. That's just not going to work either. So we're down to portions of this, and I think we have to rely somewhat on the experts. It is frustrating, though, just the same, to be thinking that there's a large amount of material that's going to get dumped offshore that's not going to be used for beach nourishment. And we know that we're working in other areas, and I think we really need to try to get the cooperation of everyone, the entities that are doing the dredging and also the residents that live there, to get together and issue easements and other pieces that will keep this moving along. And it just seems to get stuck where it really doesn't need to be. And I know that money's a big part of this, but we can't just be dumping it offshore. We don't allow people to do projects in a wetlands area or a resource area and tell us that we can't do that, we can't protect the wetland because we can't afford it. When they give us that answer, it's not an acceptable answer. Our purview is to protect the environment. In this case, we're really not talking about protecting the river, because that is being done. There's folks that are looking at this, they're looking at the shellfish, they're looking at the other impacts. So that part of it is being addressed properly. It would be really helpful at some point to try to get as much of that back into the river, but I don't see that as being the obstacle in this piece going forward. But certainly we need to try to work at that if we can.
And I can assure you, we do a lot of projects down the Cape, which are much more sandier conditions than we see up in this area traditionally, and it's a frustrating regulation, and that regulation has been on the books for a very long time, and that really comes down to the logic of spending taxpayers' money to dredge something and then putting that material on a privately owned land. So instead of charging money to the owner, the trade-off is the public access.
I understand.
And that's the unfortunate.
And I think we all know that.
Right.
I mean, and it's understandable.
It's challenging.
But it's an absolutely understandable piece.
Yeah.
You can't take public money.
It's challenging,
do
trust
that.
me.
And I also understand the mechanical versus, Cohasset went for their brains trying to dredge that project and put that material back on the beach, and it didn't work. It's just too many rocks. You can't pump rocks.
There's a lot of things going on here, and again, I think for this site in particular, we've had 2 attempts hydraulically, and
Yeah, it's just, why bother?
it just can't work. Sorry.
Yep.
So where's the material going for B and C of this dredging?
Same place.
Same place. Everything is being permitted together. The reason we talked about phasing would be about how much money is available to do it. They may have to do Area A first. The idea would, if money's available to do the whole thing, then of course you do it all in one season, but it could be prohibited by funding availability.
Anybody else? Take a
Make
motion.
a motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thanks for your time.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate
Thank you.
the effort.
Thanks for
Are
coming in.
you doing the clam warden now for Scituate?
Yes, I am.
Sometime I'd like to have some more conversation about that.
Bring this to email.
I'll do that. Appreciate your efforts, Mike. Thank you very much.
I'd like to talk to you too
Thank you,
at
Nancy.
another time about your take on the oysters and the benefit of the oysters in the water.
I'm already in the Scituate, MDMA Scituate, MA.gov. It'll come right to my iPad and I'll record it back.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
DPW McCarthy, 32 Gardner Road, modify existing drainage. On June 18, 2018, 7 p.m., the Town Hall, Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws, regarding the Town of Scituate DPW to modify an existing drainage structure to manage stormwater runoff from the public street. Disturbed areas will be restored and stabilized on property located at number 32 Gardner Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Commission, Sean McCarthy with the Department of Public Works here in Scituate. We had a proposal before you last year for the reconstruction of the drainage. This is an existing drain pipe on Gardner Road that handles the street drainage. The existing pipe outlet does an outlet in the easement. So last year we proposed to redirect the drainage outfall into the easement, which would put it pretty close to number 26 Gardner Road. After that hearing, we met with the abutters on both sides, and Mr. Ayer has offered to create a new easement on his property at 26, or 32 rather, and to minimize permanent impacts to the drainage system, we would create a drop inlet manhole at the existing outfall and bury the pipe within the ditch that's there now. And the only permanent impacts would be at the outlet, where we would have stone riprap to collect any sediment. As part of this drainage improvement project in 2004, when it was constructed, the catch basins that are in Gardner Road were upgraded to deep sump catch basins.
Sean, you gave Carol about a notification.
Did,
stuff, right?
yes.
Thank you.
All the work is within the resource area. There are former lines back in 2002 for the original project, and then a couple of slightly varying lines on the Ayer property. But regardless, we're within the resource area.
Right. Well, go ahead, Penny. Why don't you?
Well, I would like to, this is something that we just keep going round and round, and I don't know if DEP has gotten back to us on this, on moving it or what. I'm like up in the air, what we should or shouldn't do. Just leave it where it is. We get the easement changed. It's very convoluted, the whole thing, how it all
This
happened.
proposal would leave it where it is.
Just leave
So what
it
we would-
there and put a pipe in.
Well, we'd take the hydric soil from the top,
Okay.
excavate for the pipe,
Yeah.
backfill the pipe, and then put the hydric soil back on top of it, and it would return it to its existing condition. So you wouldn't see the pipe until it got to the end.
How close to the wetlands are you gonna be discharging it?
50 feet is the spill pad. So that'll get it past the existing foundation of the abutting property. So that doesn't have an
Yeah.
impact to that.
Why can't we just leave it as it is? Why do we have to put the pipe in? I mean, is it hurting anybody?
Yes, it is.
Is it flooding?
Well, let's,
I'm
you know what,
talking-
the way the meeting works, and I know everybody's got thoughts on this, is let the commission members question the engineer or the agents, and then we'll get through that piece, and then we'll get to abutters or interested parties, okay?
In the original design, the idea was to create a channel
Okay.
for the water to flow down. And as the flow got further and further away from the outfall, which was, or is, up by the edge of the road,
Yeah.
that berm to keep the water channelized wasn't constructed or didn't maintain itself. So the flow started to spread out as it got closer and closer to the wetland.
Okay.
So a berm could be constructed in the existing, with the easement, to channelize the flow, to keep it within, I think, which was their original intent in 2004.
Okay. All right.
I don't think Amy received a DEP number
No,
as of yet.
We
so
haven't heard from them at all.
no DEP number, no comments yet.
I did get the card back from them, so
So-
they did receive it.
Yeah, so we'll move forward. We'll hold this hearing. We probably won't be able to close until we get that information, but everybody's here, so we're gonna keep moving this along.
So, I agree with Penny, it's convoluted. Your expert opinion on how this would remedy the situation?
Well, the concerns of us putting it into the easement are a concern of the abutting neighbor at 26. We could move it into the easement and pipe it past the house. Now we're going to impact the resources area twice as wide as it does now.
Okay.
Mr. Ayer has offered to leave it where it is and give us a new easement, so the outfall would remain where it is, and jump on the same wagon that we don't want to impact number 26, let's get it past the house and outfall it there, and 50 feet from the wetlands, we can install the splash pad and we can get it past the abutting property foundation.
Good for now?
For now.
Lisa?
All right, so just so I understand what you're saying, Sean.
It's
So-
confusing.
All right, so with this new easement and a pipe, controls it, and it will get it past the abutters and the 50, so it's better for the wetlands, it's better for the abutters to do it that way.
It's in a resource area no matter where we stop it. Yeah, whether we stop it at the street. Burying the pipe was just an attempt to restore grade to where it is. If wetland vegetation can grow there now, I didn't want to change the grade and not allow that to happen. Put that same soil right back on top of the pipe. So they'll excavate that, put it here, bury the pipe, and then put that same soil back on top. If a seed mix is required, we could do that on top.
So there would be ultimately less disturbance,
Keeping it where it is?
right?
I think so. Trees have grown up now since this was originally constructed. So if we go to move this over to the easement, there's some substantial vegetation and brush that would now come down. So you'd have the channel that exists now, and then you'd have a new swath, I guess.
So there would be
So
more,
those-
would be more disturbance.
Correct.
So that's not a positive thing to have more disturbance.
Temporary, I'm sure it'll come back, if we graded it properly.
More work.
More work, yeah.
Jen? Amy?
Well, yeah, I mean, I have just a few things related to, I put them in the administrative category, such as an old DEP order of conditions that needs to be closed.
Mhm.
We can really proceed further on this. There's also missing information in the application for the notice of intent.
Limited.
You know, things that, like, the resource areas are not completely and accurately delineated. The question, I believe it's a limited project, and with a limited project, there's a requirement for an alternatives analysis, which is also missing. So I think that would answer many of the questions that you have about whether or not the project is appropriately cited and makes sense. Other permits that could be triggered in addition to the local order would be potentially at the state level, such as a NIPD's permit. Always need to consider whether this is going to be of suitable public interest and it's going to be in the interest of everybody involved.
I'm sorry, what is that permit, Amy?
So there's a comment in the wetlands regulations about whether projects further overriding public interest. So should consider that. But anyways, that would be a start, and I think that it would be interesting to see, you know, if DEP will issue a file number for this, and if they have any comments or not.
Amy, how many square feet have to be disturbed for a NIFTY's permit? Isn't it a square footage yet, or?
Well, I think that is related to the discharge, the direct discharge.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps Sean can answer that, because I don't know the answer to that.
Not off the top of my head, it's typically land disturbance, I think.
Right, I just wonder how, what are we, I mean, that's just one of the pieces you mentioned. I didn't think that a project of this size triggered something like that, but, I mean, maybe this.
Well, the order will cover it in that any other required permitting would.
Right. Okay.
Could be 401 water quality cert, I'm not sure, some DEP picks up on the state requirements, so.
I think calling it a limited project on an existing outfall will lower the stormwater standards that are applicable to it. Not all of them, but.
Right, it gives you more latitude in that it's a maintenance project.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, so a culvert outfall maintenance project, you have more latitude as a limited project.
Right.
But as such, it hasn't been filed as such at this point. The box isn't checked, no alternative analysis, so.
Okay.
So we have a ways to go, but I think this is a good introduction and a good way to fill out how the abutters feel about the project and, you know, close any missing information, loose ends that we might have.
Okay. Pat, you didn't come here to hang around tonight. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I was just here because there were 2 or 3 that I've been working on in the past, and I told Sean that I would be involved with questions in the past on the projects.
Okay. All right. So,
I have a question. What are the orders or order that have not been completed from a past project? What's outstanding?
So if I'm not mistaken, the order is from the original install.
From the original install?
Right.
which was how long ago?
Administrative thing, but where, if there are other open matters, you should not to proceed with new matters. So
Yeah.
this would be an open order. Although technically it's expired, you still have to close it out.
Okay.
So how would we go about that?
They would file for, request for certificate of compliance, just like any other project.
Okay, should we be moving forward before we close
No.
that
no, we should get that taken care
John,
of.
get that taken care
Yeah.
of. Okay, I'm done.
I guess from the audience, anybody have any comments or questions? Yes, sir.
Tom Nagel for the abutter 26 Gardner Road, the calendars. We like the new proposal much better than the old one. In that it's not moving the stormwater system closer to my client's foundation.
Yeah.
We've only just today had an opportunity to look at the plan, so we don't have a lot of, detailing comments on it, but I think one concern is, and in fact, we like the idea that it's a discrete pipe, as opposed to kind of an open braided spillway, if you will, right now. But one of the concerns is that where it ends, it is indeed past the foundation of 26, but it's just past it. And
I think the reason is, though, is to try to stay 50 feet out of the,
Buffer out of the wetlands.
yeah.
I understand, right, so that's the conflict, I think, that you want to say out of the 50-foot buffer.
Have to.
But if it's a pipe as opposed to an open network, my sense is, and I'm not a technical guy, but the velocity will increase, and if that's the case, there may be scouring at the end of that pipe, and that scouring will happen pretty close to, probably on my client's property. So there is a concern about that, and I know that if you go within that 50 feet, a variance, I believe it's a variance, would be required. So I think our comment is simply, if the town would consider extending the pipe further towards the waterway, and if necessary, seeking variance to do that, then that way it's not going to undermine and impact my client's property, or at least minimize it. I know that no matter what, this project is going to impact my client's property, but obviously our interest is just to minimize it, understanding that there are other, there are other constraints, and we recognize the 50-foot buffer constraints. And so I would ask that perhaps the DPW consider extending the pipe and seeking variance to do so within the.
All right. Well, that's why we're here tonight, to get all the laundry on the line. Anybody else?
For the record, Gregory Morse speaking on behalf of the Air family. I've been involved in this project for several years and made some of the suggestions on the plan that the DPW has put forth with this notice of intent. We're excited to see progress here. This is remedying a problem that has existed probably for in excess of 10 years at this point. Extending the pipe, my clients would certainly like to see it extended in the interest that it couldn't be extended if it could be in more of a defined swale or contained within a berm of some kind, perhaps inside the 50-foot buffer. You could have a vegetated swale, and that might help convey stormwater as well if the pipe couldn't be extended.
Okay, anybody else? So, I mean, I think we don't really have to beat this one to death. Everybody knows how we got to this point. And trying to come up with a amicable solution, and appreciate the heirs willing to consider shifting this over. I mean, years ago, things were put in the wrong place inadvertently, and it's been going on for a very long time. Some of this stuff came to light because of other issues that happened on these properties, some enforcement orders and clearing and whatnot, and this really isn't addressing any of those. This is trying to deal with the easement piece to start with and get this into a place where everybody's happy or can live with the drainage. And you understand that there is a lot of regulatory pieces that fall into this, and it will, the state's already weighed in on, DEP's already weighed in on a few of these pieces, so it would be interesting to see how they take a look at this particular project. I, for one, am looking forward to seeing this getting resolved. I'm sure the DPW is, and the neighbors and the butters are as well. In restoring the ground, as you pointed out, Sean, you'd remove the hydric materials, place the pipe in the ground, and then cover it back up with the hydric materials. So then, essentially, we still have a piece there. However, now we don't have any water or anything get into this. The water's going to flow underneath and
Other than what contributes overland.
Overland.
Because it is graded.
Right. So we do have some of that
Shed.
that will continue.
Yep. Agreed.
And I don't know whether DEP will weigh in on any of that, whether there's any degrading of that area by the lack of water that's right now flowing onto it, whether that is something that should be evaluated as well.
Sure. Some of these options that we've talked about, kicked around, we can discuss in the alternatives analysis as well.
To me, I mean, this is sort of a layman's look at this, but if I look at it real quickly and say, what do I see as a positive or negative, I see getting, an agreement to allow this to continue and for water to flow away from these and not be impacted. It's a lot of road drainage, and it was cobbed together over many years with drainage out on Gardner Road and drainage of some water that flowed across there and other street drainage that all comes into this area, and it's discharged onto private property. So it would be good to find an amicable solution to get this sorted out, and at the same time be respectful of any environmental concerns that happen. And it's the discharge of that water closer to the marsh and how that's managed, and then whether there'll be any degrading of the area that's now going to be become covered over, if you will. In my mind, those are the kind of the two things that we should be addressing, and I would think DEP would be concerned with. And the other thing I had asked before was, is there any way to clean up any of this discharge before it gets to the marsh? In different places, if this was a new street, for instance, we'd be looking for some sort of storm scepter or some other piece to, in some way, either when it leaves the street or at the discharge point, that there's some way that we can maybe make that water a little better before it moves on towards the marsh.
Well, I think part of their original was switching those catch basins to deep sumps, which I know gets you a portion
Great.
of. And then, as I've been reviewing Mass Highways stormwater guidance, they realize that it's not a subdivision, that you don't dedicate a lot to a detention basin and have
Right.
extended stormwater.
Which would have been
that
the
you're-
situation if this was all brand new.
Right, that's right, that you're working within corridors.
Yep.
And they realize space is limited, so they do talk about the dissipator at the outfall, the splash pad. There are mechanical separators that we could investigate. I don't know, we may need to put an additional structure in. I don't know if we can do a 4-foot drop manhole like we're proposing here to bury the pipe, because we're getting all our change in depth. I
Yeah.
can't slope the pipe. I don't want to increase the velocities in it.
I get it.
So it's, it's relatively, flat. I say it's 2%.
Yep. So by doing the deep sump out at this,
I'm dropping it at the street immediately.
Yep.
And then this can
got it.
be pitched slower so that it doesn't rocket out of the end of the pipe.
Yep.
And you can restore this relatively quickly back to what it is.
Sure.
But I can certainly add at least a discussion to the alternatives analysis on just what we've talked about tonight, moving it back, leaving it open, piping it to the end.
Sure.
I know that's
Yep.
how we've got to what you're looking at now.
Right, right,
exactly,
right.
like
Okay.
all different input. So
I don't know if a pipe should be in 50-foot, should it?
What's that?
We didn't go there yet.
Yeah.
They're talking about it, but we
Yeah.
haven't gone there yet.
What's-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering, I don't know if a pipe should be in the 50-foot buffer, even if it's buried. Should anything, I thought your buffer was no touch.
Well,
So, I mean, I'm just asking a question.
yeah. I think at some point, if we need to work this through with everyone
Sure.
that's here, and,
Yeah.
and at the same time, again, make sure that our concerns are met.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of them to take a look at and see. But I think if we can know that we've improved the discharge, the quality of discharge water, and at the same time resolve some of the issues that are
Yes.
here, and maintain a resource area, then I think that would meet the goals that we're trying to achieve, I think.
Too.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to get DEP feedback, so we're gonna have to continue this.
How far out do you want to go, Sean? 2 weeks or 4?
It's 3 or 5.
Well, it's actually 3.
3 or 5.
The next one's July 9th, and then after that, it's
23rd.
23rd.
I wonder how soon we'll get comment back from them.
I don't know.
What were the two dates? I'm sorry.
July 9th or July 23rd. Either 3 or 5 weeks.
23rd?
The sooner the better.
Sooner the better.
The 9th?
Yeah, that's
Do the ninth. We'll try July 9th.
Okay. I make a motion to continue DPW McCarthy, 32 Gardner Road, fire system drainage, for July 9th at 6:20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, thank you for your comments tonight.
No, thanks
Thank
for
you, Sean.
everybody's, I appreciate the cooperation.
Yeah.
We may see this thing through at some point.
Thank you.
Penny, do you want this one back?
Yeah, since we continue.
You're very welcome.
Order of conditions, what else what are you,
Outdoor entertainment permit.
Not here. Outdoor entertainment? Is he crazy?
My wife's been dealing with it. There was an email from somebody named Allison. I just thought we were supposed to come here.
that's a bummer.
Allison?
Allison Richmond?
Never.
For tonight?
No,
We're-
no, no.
Oh.
It's for a party we're having on July 28th.
Thank you, Board of
Yeah, have fun.
My wife has been back and forth with her regarding an outdoor entertainment permit.
Oh, she's in the select.
And
I think that's the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
how are you? I'm in the process of getting your outdoor entertainment permit approved. Hours you'll be having the band, you can adjust, email back to me.
You
And
poor guy.
we'll
You've
sort
been
of
sitting
make-
there all night
I
before the
know.
meeting.
I think
That's
you, I think
Selectmen.
you want the Selectmen meeting.
And when is that?
I think it's tomorrow night. Is it tomorrow?
Or was it last week? It might be.
You know what you could do? Go down the end of the hall, there's a whole board with all the postings of the various meetings. Start by looking at the selectmen's meeting and see if you're on there for that.
Okay.
Unless you're trying to do it in a wetland, we don't really care.
No, I mean, it's, to tell you quite honestly, it's a three-piece steel drum band in our yard right off of Beaver Dam. So-
We-
No.
Well, we hope
Like,
you've
quite
learned
honestly,
something
I should have
tonight.
been More, I should have been more full. My wife's been handling the whole thing.
And I'm sure
Back
she's
and forth
doing a good
with
job.
emails.
Did you learn about conservation tonight?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of stuff I took interest in at the beginning, but after a while I...
Right,
Yeah.
Are all the postings at the, Carol will show you. Maybe she can help you with that. Well, good luck.
2.5 hours.
I think you should just get it just because you sat here and waited.
I agree.
We'll try to send a letter out. I was,
joking.
I did too. And he was gonna come up and show us some crazy thing.
You might have
somebody
seen
did.
it.
Yeah,
One of these for
He
each of the
wasn't.
ladies.
Richard's got,
He's doing a Center Harvard, blah, blah, blah.
This is actually, I'm going to butt in, it's actually Nancy Durfee's program going through the CAC, Coastal Activities. My wife is on it, Frank's on it. It's, the reason it's being held is because there is funding available if such a program of educating the community and giving them a chance to have an interactive program in terms of how we handle some of these issues along the coast. And so it is scheduled for July 19th, July 17th, excuse me, at what used to be Pier 44. I think that helps people identify where it is almost better than the Scituate Harbor Community Building. It is an interactive thing, it's a meeting, there will be refreshments, they would like you to sign up if you're gonna go, and we'd like to get the word out as much as possible, so that people can really understand that the community input is what will greatly determine how much funding we can get from the state and federal agencies. And we've already gotten on the short list for doing this. That's primarily through Nancy. Tom Hall's been involved with it too. There have been a lot of people involved. So I'm helping my wife out a little bit, and hopefully the word will get out. It's posted in several post offices. It's posted here. But anyone you can think of, and I have more of these, if you can think of anyone you want to give them to, would be helpful. We've got a month to get the word out and get people enrolled in this. I think it will be extremely interesting to see what kind of proposals might come up, ideas might come up. The whole charge of the Coastal Activities Committee is to bring to the Board of Selectmen ideas of things that might be done, and might is a big word, but might be done in order to help deal with the change in climate along the coast.
What's the Coastal Activities
no,
Committee?
it's actually Coastal Advisory.
Coastal
Richard's
Advisory,
he's
I'm
been
sorry.
off for a little while.
Oh, okay, I thought it was just a
No,
new
Coastal
subcommittee.
Advisory, no.
He got off that committee and he forgot about it pretty quick.
Well, my wife's on it,
He was sure she was going to some kind of meeting.
And she's obviously smart because
Yeah.
she's not here. and he's
She goes to
talking.
these meetings and I have a free night.
So, and can I just add one piece
Yeah,
to this?
please, you're on it.
As a Coastal Advisory Committee, but this is not just about the coast. This is any storm-related things. It's resiliency for the town of Scituate as a whole. So though a big part of it is dealing with the coast, it's also dealing with inland issues. If we have storms, there's power outages, so we would hope to get sort of a feedback from folks all around town. You know, what happens in Hummerock or what happens on Peggotty Beach is not the same impact that might happen to somebody in Greenbush, North Scituate,
Right.
or in the West End. You know, trees down, roads that are impassable, all those sort of things can happen in different areas. And so it's gonna, as Richard said, it's a workshop. People will be placed in groups and asked about their concerns for the town of Scituate and what they think is important. And then all that feedback goes back, which, as Richard says, helps us secure other funding for some of these pieces. So
Now, doing stuff like this, does this also help our CRS rating too?
that's a good question.
It is a good question. I would say this, though, and we have the best in the whole state
Oh, I know we do.
already. So I don't know if we're
We're-
going to be able to
we're
get more,
kinda-
but it
we're the
doesn't
lead-
hurt.
we're
It
the leader
certainly
in
won't
there,
hurt.
yeah.
We are the leading town in the whole state.
The
for
Coastal
CRS.
Activities Committee is having a party.
BYOB.
You started it.
Carol, you're not the only one retiring.
Hey, I spent my day with the three
But
of
it
them.
would, it would be helpful. We do want to get, this is important, and it would be good to get some input from various areas around town. So I think if the word gets out, if anybody's watching, if they have some interest, it would be great to see some participation in this.
And I have more of these if necessary.
We'll get the word out. All right?
Thank you, sir.
Can I do the minutes?
Sure.
I make a motion to accept the minutes of May 7th and May 21st as written, 2018.
Just have a second on that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great,
Mix it up a little.
thank you. Orders and conditions, Keys, 236 Central Ave.
Make a motion, they're accepted as written.
Second.
Number 9 Hawthorne Street.
Oh, I make
Elevate.
a motion, we accept the orders as written on Hawthorne, 9 Hawthorne.
Alex, second that.
And 14 Fieldstone Road septic repair.
Second that.
I make a motion, we accept the orders as written.
Hey, you're ready to go, aren't you?
He's ready.
Not only that, we might ask for a vote on these
Take a
sometime.
vote on all of them.
Well,
You
we'll
gotta
roll
vote.
them all into one.
Okay, go ahead.
We have a second?
Yeah, we got a second.
All in favor of both?
All three.
All three.
All three.
Yeah, thank you, Richard.
Aye.
Aye.
Certificate of compliance, Amy? Okay. All good?
Yes.
Okay.
No questions on them?
No questions, good.
Good.
Got good people.
Awesome.
That's it.
No, actually,
Oh, no, all right.
we wanted to vote, well, so anyways, we were notified that there are a handful of properties that are up for extensions of their orders of conditions. They're all specifically related to FEMA grants for
Oh, yeah.
elevating.
Yeah.
They're all coming up roughly around the same time. And those addresses are 5 Irving, 87 Scituate Ave, and 162 Jericho Road.
So why don't we make
I'll make a motion to extend the orders on the 3 addresses that Amy,
3 years.
for 3 years, on the 3 addresses Amy just mentioned.
5 Irving, 87 Scituate, 167 Jericho.
162 Jericho.
160.
Oh, you're so good, Richard. I can't even
Really, I
remember.
missed one again.
Second it. please.
Second.
Sevens and twos look a lot.
Similar, yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, and then.
Thanks for watching that.
Really
It's
quickly.
helpful to people.
Really quickly, without going into enforcement too deep, you saw the correspondence that we have for 24 Webster. Said that one. Did you not? I think you all weighed in one way or another. So I'm going to give the recommendation to the attorney that you want it all.
Yes.
Right,
All.
yeah.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
everything that was done was done after the COC.
Yeah.
Except maybe for Paul, who might be a little bit, have been a slightly different opinion,
But he's
then
not
in the
here.
end, he agreed.
Yes, he did.
Yes.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
did. Yeah, I think it has to be done as it was, as we said it, right in the beginning, from the
Right.
start.
Okay, and then we've all heard about Candlewood,
Yeah.
so.
Oh, the neighbors.
Tomorrow, no, just about Mr. Kamen,
Do we want to go there tomorrow or Wednesday with Pat?
it's up to you, Frank.
All right, I'll talk to you. Take a look and see. I think Pat said he's around on Wednesday, and he's got the history on it. If we can make Wednesday work and drag him out
Make
there.
Wednesday work, sure.
Yeah.
I can't make Wednesday work. I
Well-
can make tomorrow work.
Well, we can do tomorrow.
No,
I mean,
not
I
for my,
think we roughly have a gist of what's going on.
Oh,
So
yeah.
now he's working behind his house, and the story is maybe a little bit different, depending on who you talk to. But the point is that he needs to get somebody on board and get a restoration plan going.
But enough is enough. And he needs to be
Right.
fined
Agree with her.
daily because I support Frank's letter. If you do another thing without the permission of the commission or the agent, and we find out, you will have a new enforcement order and fine daily, and we need to do it. Or how do we sit here and hold anybody else accountable? Please, answer me. How
Right.
many violations does he have to have before
That's correct.
we do it?
But for the record, because I'm not really able to chime in on this, but for Ann Vinyl, it was not like the abutters' concerns were ignored on what was going on. They were informed that there was a cease and desist, so it was adequately regulated. And that a notice of intent was pending. So if you mean, I know that you know that it was not ignored by staff.
Didn't even cross my mind.
But it's hard to sit back and hear that, you know what I mean? So, just so you know.
Yeah, when you know darn well
Speak
that-
up,
yeah.
that he was listened to and was told what was going on, which was that there was a cease and desist.
Well, we understand, I mean, I think there's a lot of people
It's a
that
difficult situation.
want to see something happen a certain way, and when it doesn't occur that way, that they can,
Well, it gets complicated. I mean, but you know, if there's a cease and desist by one office, it applies for everything.
Yeah.
So it's unnecessary to have
right.
a backup enforcement on something that's already been stopped.
I think for-
Especially when there's a pending application.
The hardest, yeah, and the hardest part for people is when they want to do the thing correctly. They've filed with us, they've asked for permission, maybe they were denied, or they went through a process which cost them time and money,
Yeah.
and then they watch their neighbor, you know, do the thing with a flashlight.
Oh,
It's not fair.
frustrating for all of us.
Well, it's frustrating
You know
for
what I
us,
mean?
because how many times do we have to deal with people that did what they darn well pleased, and then
Right.
they
So-
file later?
There are people that like to ask for forgiveness, you know,
Yeah.
and then there are
Yeah,
people that just
cultural.
didn't know, and I frankly do believe that young lady that was here today,
Oh,
you
my
know,
God.
and,
Yeah.
and I felt terrible talking to her today. She was in tears and you know, and I'm like, geez, maybe I better tone the letter down. But we use standard language, you know what I mean? Because it's true. If you do these things in a resource area and you alter, fill, dredge, I mean, you're liable up to, you know, $25,000 when you get that letter in the mail. It's not something to be taken lightly.
Well, some people
So-
respond that way, and other people just,
Throw it in
Throw it in the
trash.
rubbish
Yeah.
and
That's
go
right,
on
I
their merry
know,
way.
but, and I
So,
think to Lisa's point,
Yeah.
for frequent flyers, for people that are snubbing their nose or
Yeah.
ignoring us, I think it's really time that we
Fine.
find them
Totally agree.
and
Absolutely.
and deal with it. I mean, otherwise, it's just a lot of you know.
In this particular case, I'm entering, I think, my 6th year, and this was the first thing I ran into, the first meeting I came.
Yeah.
So it's time.
Well, unfortunately, there is due process and there's a way that the enforcement manual lays out how you're supposed to go for these violators, you know what I mean? And so we're certainly at that point with this case.
Yeah.
Although it's still not easy to do. I mean, you can levy a fine on somebody, but you still have to get the money, you know what I mean? And, but anyway, so,
we have to.
but all those things are happening. Moving on to something else, we did accept the resignation of Bill Schmidt. So we are actively looking for two
We need 2 people.
people.
It's a 7-person committee.
Well, no.
It's supposed to be
Oh.
a 7-person committee.
I know that, but the 6 of us.
Yeah, but Paul's okay. I think we just need one.
No, well, you know, we were thinking of replacing you, old man. Or you.
I thought I was gone.
You
Wow.
are, you might be.
You're not gone.
They haven't fired me yet?
I don't
Oh,
think.
gosh.
So
No.
actually, we're
One.
looking for one.
Yes.
No, and
And the
please.
selectman's office knows about it. I believe it's being advertised.
Right.
Did you gentlemen put in your, to re-up?
I did, actually.
Frank, oh boy, I bet didn't.
I think I did.
When? 3 years
You're
ago?
up already?
Yes, he's up.
I don't think we did.
He certainly is.
And I did email Doug also.
Yeah, he and I corresponded by email, but he's still got some other commitments. If he's quite ready to do that.
I did re-up. That doesn't mean they'll accept me.
No, I know that, but that one there needs to put his thing in, too. Okay, I make.
Carol, if you want to ask the selectman office tomorrow, if I did, I'm almost positive I put mine in, but if you,
I will.
if you
Oh,
don't,
we'll just see.
if you don't mind.
Carol, did you change your mind and re-up yourself?
Yeah, she's gonna be up in her
No, but
house.
I'd like to be here for the fines, because I've heard about it.
Oh, for how many years, Carol?
27.75 years.
Yeah.
Did you want to witness
22
it?
years,
Yeah.
I'm hearing about fines.
Well, Pat-
Marshfield successfully just.
Amy, how long ago
got a
did-
fine of how much money?
Oh, shoot.
Like $600 or something like
Oh,
that?
it was more than that, I think.
You know, the.
Amy, how long have you been doing this job now?
Here, a year?
For Scituate?
Yeah,
11 months.
11 months.
She's
So
been
Pat
here.
essentially got done 11 months ago, right?
Yeah.
But he's
June
still,
30th of
but he's still here.
2017. Yeah. What are you saying?
But he's getting
I
paid.
know.
She's not.
Well, Carol,
Yeah.
you never know.
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, I think this could be our last night meeting.
Yeah.
It'll be a daytime thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
All
that
right.
would be nice.
Well, sure we're gonna need some help, so.
Lord have mercy.
Oh,
I make
God.
a motion.